It's time to kick up your life with Master Mel.
You could be the hero, you could get the gold. Breaking all the records you thought never could be broke.
Learn how to optimize your business and your life with Master Melodee Meyer. As she speaks with thought leaders, athletes, entrepreneurs, and high achievers to discover their secrets of success. Master Mel uses her experience in martial arts, nutrition, fitness, and psychology to help you kick it up to the next level of mastery in your life. And now, here's your host, Master Mel.
Hello, this is Melodee Meyer, and I'm happy to have you here. I want to welcome those who are listening live on the radio. And if you're joining us live on Crowdcast and you have a question, just feel free to type it in the chat. Thank you also to those of you who are listening or watching the replay. Feel free to leave comments, and as always, I love to continue the conversation on my website, mastermel.com. Now, I'm excited to introduce to you a very special guest and a dear friend of mine today. Her name is Sage Parker. Now, Sage has reinvented herself several times. She was born in France and grew up all over the world in a military family. She attended the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and as a professional actor on stage, as well as in feature films and television, and after starring in over 500 commercials and radio spots, she went on to nursing school and became a celebrity midwife. Didn't even know there was such a thing. Anyway, to spend more time with her young son. Now, her next incarnation was as an adjunct professor at the university, the UCSB, that's here in Santa Barbara, for the BFA acting program, where she designed a class to teach young artists how to maneuver in the business of acting without losing their passion for the craft. Now, I can't wait to talk to her more about that too, because there's some big things that happen with what she's doing now and with what I'm doing. So we're going to get into that too. But it wasn't until she was caring for her ill father that she discovered an amazing gift she had for organizing that has now led her into the career that she's doing now. She helps individuals and businesses prepare for disasters before they happen. She's been called the transition organizer, an emergency preparer, an inventory proofer. I like to call her the disaster midwife. Please welcome Sage Parker.
Hello.
I'm so glad you're here, girlfriend. This is going to be fun.
Thanks for having me. Always. It's great to see you, actually.
Yeah, this is, you can see the person, not just hear them. That's good.
Who knew?
So sometimes in order to kick up your life to the next level, you've got to come to terms with the inevitable, which for all of us, it is that thing called death. Now, Sage, do you find that people are kind of in denial about this thing called death?
Well, we're all perishable items, is what I like to refer to it as. And I feel like even if you're not in denial and you feel like, you know, you've got your grounds covered with your will, and you have, you're aware of death, you're not afraid of it. There are all the details, the minutia that most people don't want to deal with. They either feel like their kids are going to take care of it, or it's not going to happen, or if they do really prepare, then that's a way of sort of signaling, okay, I'm ready to go. And I've dealt with all kinds of personalities in that regard. You know, so for me, I mean, I feel like what I do is like just facilitate transitions for people. And that's something that applied to midwifery, and it applied to acting. It applied to being in the military with my family, with my parents, and traveling, is that all these little details needed to always be facilitated. Even if you couldn't prepare emotionally for something that was inevitable, or you didn't know exactly what was going to happen, there's certain things you can always do to make it not quite so traumatic for yourself and for everybody else in your family.
Well, yeah, you have to deal with the emotional part of it. Why also pile on top of that all of the details and the practical things that need to be handled that could have been dealt with in advance, yes?
Well, that's the thing that I found when I was with my father before he died, understandably. And he said, I don't want to spend what time I have dealing with all of this, because a lot of details had not been done earlier. And so because they lived in this community that wasn't assisted living, but it was a retirement community, there were a lot of people in the same position. When my father passed away, the biggest thing that I had to, had to help in transition was my mom. So, and in doing that, realizing there were all these things you needed to prep for to get somebody else into the house to help take care of her. She didn't drive. She wasn't used to being alone or without my dad. Pardon me. So in doing that, I started making lists, and it was the same sort of preparation I did before I moved as a kid, before I would go on an audition. It was just sort of doing bullet points of what was the most important thing that I needed to sort of look at and be prepared for. And one of the biggest things was doing just an inventory of things that meant something to her. Not hoping, not thinking that somebody was going to steal. You don't want to feel that way. You want to feel like you can trust people. And certainly when you got people that are connected to a particular caregiving company they're bonded. But there's an expression, keep honest people honest. And in a way of doing that, I thought it would just put my mom, give her a great peace of mind. So we started doing lists and making inventory. Then I had to figure out a way for the caregiver to get information to me and to my siblings about my mom's health. So she needed to have a way to not have to take notes herself at a doctor's office. And that became a whole nother set of forms that I came up with for the caregiver to not have to take copious notes, but rather fill in the lines. Just, I had a place for blood pressure, what happened at her last appointment. And it made it for a very easy way to keep records, and also a great way to transition that information to the rest of the family so that we could keep tabs on it. And most people say, well, why didn't you put it on, have the caregiver use a cell phone? And you don't really want a lot of somebody else's sensitive information on somebody else's cell phone. So that, along with the fact that most people my mother's age, she's 92, are not that computer savvy. They're not that cell phone savvy. And to have it at a place where she could get to it, where it was analog, became the piece for me that I saw was missing when I went on the net to try to find these things and see if there were any of these tools already available to help people. And that's one of the ways, that's really the main way the business got started.
Okay, so I always like to let the listener walk away from this time together with some real practical things that they can do. So I want to, at some point, we don't have to get into it right this second, but before we finish today, I'd like to really be able to give some tips, some of your top tips for things that you need to have in order, you know, if there is some kind of a disaster, some kind of emergency situation. What are the questions? What are the things that we need to sort of have ready for them? Like, I know even for myself, I was talking the other day to somebody at my work, because I take my dog to work with me. I was thinking, and something happened to my dog while I was gone, would they know what to do? Would they even know like where the closest place is to take him? Or do you know what I mean? It's like, I realized that there were so many like little things like that that I didn't have in place, that I hadn't even thought through myself. And then I thought, well, my gosh, if something happened while I'm here at work, would I even know where I should go? And, or what's going to be open, or, you know, all those kinds of things that you don't really plan or think of in advance.
Well,
so
that's the heart of what I do, and people can do it for themselves. It's really just write it down. When you think of things, how I started out doing it was there were no forms. I thought about if somebody was to come into my home and have to take care of my mom or at her house, take care of my dog, my cat, take care of my house, what would be the easiest way for them to have all the information in one place, and also have it concise in a way that a third grader could understand it? And the way I figured that out was, I call it going back to school. And when I work with my clients, most of my clients will order these, they're beautifully bound leather notebooks. You can go to Staples. I call it going back to school. As I said, you get a notebook. It's what works. You pull a tab to the side, and that tab will tell you emergency for, say, a pet care guide. You're going to have a section for medications the animal might be on. The first thing on the first page I put is directions to the vet. So if you're at work, you want to make sure that you know what the closest place around you is. Start a file in your computer. Write all of this stuff down under different categories, so that whatever is the quickest way that person can access the information, which I think is just flipping a tab that has it in bold print right there in front of them, and have it all typed out, is the best thing you can do. You can even put in there, I mean, you can go as far with these things as you want. And for my mom, for a caregiver guide, you know, when you get older, I think a lot of people just see an old person. I don't think you really see the personality or what this person has contributed. So what I'll do when I do this for a client, and you can do it yourself, is I will interview them. And if you know your parents at all, you write a short bio in the front of the caregiver guide, and you say, this is who this person is. This is what they like and don't like. This is not some person being elderly and crabby. You know, they've lived this full life. Put some details about their relationships and their children, so that when they look at that person in front of them or the pet in front of them, they know that, you know, it's not them, and nothing is universal. Everything is individual. So in doing that, you have the ability, every single person out there has the ability to go get a notebook, sit in front of a computer, type it all out, and then I leave it in a place that I say on the front of it, do not remove from the house, that where they can get to it for reference. And when you have, I mean, I had to do this with my my kids, and I think we've all done this at one time. The babysitter comes, you write down, you know, where you're going to be, what time you're going to get back, what food they can have, how long they can watch TV. What you do with a pet care guide and with a caregiver guide for someone who is elderly that you're caring for, or a child who's sick, you just write a lot more information. And whatever you can think of, I don't think it's too much. I think you can't give too much information, because information is power. And I've had to leave quickly myself for work or for on trips. And if somebody that I don't know, say somebody cancels at the last minute who's a house sitter or a pet sitter, I'm not that concerned about it. Everything they need to know is sitting on the dining room table in a notebook. And I stress to them, the most important thing you can do is read that from back to front, know where it is, and you'll have everything you need.
So I'll talk about, with all the fires that have happened in Santa Barbara, have you ever been evacuated?
No, we did get a reverse 911 call, which was then rescinded after about 2 hours. But I did, the way I got into doing broader inventory for people is that I had 2 friends who lost everything. I think one got their dog and a computer out. Another was away on a trip and got a phone call that the firemen were at their house. So the thing that I watched that was so heartbreaking, the way it is if you're in a transition with an elderly parent, is that emotional component. And the fact that it's not just stuff, it represents your life. Insurance companies, you know, my questions were the same as anybody else's to my friends. Well, surely you videotaped. Well, if you read the fine print on most insurance companies, you can have all the videotape you want. But when you have a loss of that size, you have to, and are required by the insurance companies to write every item down. So whether you have to watch the videotape and do it, or you're trying to recreate every item in your head, that's an emotional thing they count on, because you only have a particular amount of time to do it. And once that time is up, they count on the fact then you only have a little bit of time to come back and say, well, I forgot this. Insurance companies only end up paying a portion of what they owe. And unless you write it down, they are not required. So a lot of what I did, this is the same way with caregiving, is a lot of hand-holding. I went on the net to try to help one of my friends by trying to find an inventory list. And the inventory lists I found were furniture and a line, or kitchenware and a line, and I thought, if I could just do this for my friends, it was, first of all, something I could do for them. And I stayed up one night all night. I went around my house and I looked at every item you could own. And I simply typed it into the computer in categories, kitchen, dining, and domestic arts, outdoor furniture. And what I found was we all own a lot of stuff. And I was able to take those forms and just sit with my friend while she went, oh, I had that, or I had that. And one of the people that I did it for, who I was hired by, I presented a notebook for them to give to the insurance company, and then gave them a notebook where they had already lost everything, and I had to help them recreate their inventory. And they got every penny back in 2 weeks. And I don't think most of us are prepared to do that when we're in shock and grief over some loss, whether it's losing all our stuff or death.
Like you say, you don't even remember things until you go to use it, and then you go, oh, wait a second, I used to have, yeah. Well, we were evacuated during during the tea fire, actually, and we lost, all of our neighbors lost their houses. 50 people in my neighborhood, 50 homes rather, lost their houses and everything in them. And we had enough smoke damage that we couldn't get back in the house for 3 weeks. But at least our house was safe, and we had everything in it. Some of it we had to throw away because of the smoke damage. But so grateful. But that was a big call for me. And I find that that's how it is with a lot of people that I know, where it's like they don't think that those things are ever going to happen, or it's when it does happen, then they figure, oh, I think I'll do something about it now. It's a little bit.
A lot of people after the fact. And I think it's this big favor you can do yourself energetically. Yes, it's just stuff, but we're stewards of these stuff. It represents a life. It represents all your hard work. Why not, you can just go, okay, I'll just let it go. Or you can say, why not get back all that money? If you want to get it to charity, give it to charity. But I think to be able to hand them a list at the insurance company and go and be done with it, and go move on to work through whatever shock you're in and trying to start a new life, and be able to fund the simplest thing like a set of chairs and a pan or something to be able to start over. It's a gift you give yourself. You've worked hard to amass this stuff. Whether you decide from there on you don't want to have as much stuff, it's all good. But I think
the thing that people don't understand either about when disaster strikes, and in some way we all have to deal with some kind of a disaster.
I mean, life is nothing but transitions. It's all about, we prepare for our job, we prepare to have children in our lives, we do all this preparation for these big things, but the things that support them, whether it's things or whether it's the actual caring for a loved one, like doing caregiver work, it's important, and it's draining. And I think it's just that, it's preparing the best you can for the inevitable, and then letting it go. I mean, it's every single thing that we do in life, whether it's, every single bit of work we do and just our lives. When we get up on a daily basis, we prepare for the day and have breakfast. It's like you just do those things, and then you have to let it go and let the day come in and let the disaster come in if it does.
Well, what I like about working with you, Sage, is that you don't run or operate your life from fear. And I think what people think is that this kind of work is all about thinking about all the worst things that could possibly happen. And who wants to live thinking about that stuff and making lists, because you never know what's going to happen, and like living in fear. But you don't live in fear. And in fact, what I find that you do because of your work, you actually live in less fear because you are able to let it go.
It's the idea of, I don't know what the word would be, but it's the absolute opposite of fear. It's like, bring it on. I can go ahead and do what I need to do, and it's peace of mind. That's the greatest thing. It's a great peace of mind, because you're going to have to take care of yourself one way or the other. And if you have this stuff in place, it's a way of taking care of yourself. You can't completely prepare for things that are going to happen. And there's going to be disasters in an earthquake where you might have the bag packed and copies of all your photos, but you have something else happen to somebody you love, then deal with that. That's where your energy should go. It frees you up to deal with the bigger picture, I think, by dealing with all these little details. And if success is just opportunity and preparation, sadly, there's also the opportunity for disaster in the world. And, it doesn't have to be disaster. It can be something really wonderful, like going on a trip. The more prepared you are, the more fun the travel. The more you're open to do great things and not worry about the details at home, that, where you're on the phone all the time. It's just, I think it's freedom. I don't think it's fear at all. I think it's complete freedom from fear.
Yeah. So when people are thinking about, like, there is something new is coming, like you say, it doesn't have to be something bad, but it's some kind of big transition or big opportunity or whatever. By preparing in advance, you actually then, like you say, are freeing yourself up to be there more emotionally and to have an experience rather than worrying at that point. You may not want to worry or have fear around it now, but you'll certainly have it then if you don't deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it neuters you. I mean, if you have somebody say, this is what I used to tell my students at UCSB. I said, get a passport. And they're like, what does that have to do with acting? I said, you have no idea how many auditions I went on where they'd say, do you have a passport? And I got 2 huge jobs because I was on a plane once to Malaysia and once to France. And it was so quick that, that was that opportunity and preparation. But I also, I had a young son at home, and I already had in place, and this was long before I was doing this work, a thing at home. My parents, fortunately, were able to come stay with him. But they didn't know where the grocery store was or the closest hospital or anything. And I literally had everything waiting for them. And I was able to go have that freedom to make choices that made me money and that were fun and interesting. And I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't just done simple things like that. And it's one of the things when I work with a client who's really in denial about it, and they want me to do it, and they basically, I sometimes give people the forms and they can fill them out or, help them in certain places. But when I have those clients who want me to do everything, it's a big indicator that they're afraid. And once I show them that all these tools that you can do for yourself, really simple in the evening, if you have a few minutes, start those files on your computer for travel, what the best packing list is, places you've stayed that you want to revisit, your pet giver guide, all these things. When these opportunities come up, you just go, baby. You just, you're out the door and you can enjoy your life. You don't have to think, oh my God, I get on a plane, I'm going to be away and I forgot to say this. And the thing I find when you have it on your computer where you can start these files before you print them out, there's always something over the course of several days when you first start doing that, you go, oh, I should put that in, or that's not necessary. And it's, you have to fine tune it to you personally, what's going to work too.
Yeah. One thing that struck me when you were talking about like the caregiver's guide that you do, when we have aging parents and we are concerned about their health and whether they're taking their medicines and whether they know where everything, just the whole, it's so big. What people don't seem to realize is that when that's happening, and not only is it emotionally draining, but like for me, I still have to work while I'm doing all of that stuff. So I can take time out now to, like as I have it, whether it be here or there, to fill out forms when I'm not under stress or pressure about it. I can do that now. And then when that comes up later, I don't have to take off, weeks at a time of work or, because that's adding more stress to my life. I mean, when you were doing that for your parents, how is it that you could, take all that time? Is it because of the kind of work you've been doing?
I'm really fortunate, really fortunate. I mean, I've always been a planner. I think that's part of growing up in a military family. Years ago, I mean, long before my parents they were in good shape, they were grandparents in their 50s, I thought, if something happens to one of them, there's going to come a time that I would like to give back and take care of them. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but it was just something that was always there. When I actually went back to spend a great deal of time with my father before we found out he was ill, and I was to spend time with both my parents back east because I hadn't been able to do that. I'd been working at the university. They'd done budget cuts on the program that I was a part of. And I thought it was this horrible thing that I was going to be cut. It was fabulous because as much as I missed it, it was like that time was done. It was time for me to be with my parents. It freed me up and I saved my money. I mean, I had saved enough to have, and miles from work. And because I really loved doing commercials when I was working as an actor, that's the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, I have things that are still running that I get small residuals from. And I was also being a single mom, I was very careful with my money. I mean, I would have loved to have bought that really nice handbag, but I've gone out to do, but I was very aware. So I was able to go back and spend a great deal of time with my parents and realized that was a transition and it was something that we had to prepare for. And the other thing I realized in talking to my father, who felt really badly about not having done a lot of this earlier, and as you're the child of your, you have children yourself, you don't think about that. Your parents are capable and can do everything, but at a certain point in life that changes. And so I think really doing all that as early as possible, because it changes even in the process. My mom has now been living with me for 3 years, going on 3 years. So, 3 years. And it's just, it's changing even within the changes of her coming here. So I'm constantly tweaking things in the caregiver guide, noticing things that are different. And again, I'm so fortunate. I still work, but it's work of my choice. I can work it around her. And that's one of the things that I would get rabid about, is realizing how fortunate I am to be in the position I'm in, to be with her and make the most of this time.
And that's why that's why I wanted to bring this up, because really you were in a place where you could start creating those lists and be proactive about those things. Whereas a lot of us who do not have those plans in place, haven't thought about it at all. Suddenly, when we get thrown in there, we are also trying to juggle our own lives, our own careers, still having to make our own mortgage payments, all that, and then having the burden of like dealing with their stuff, if I'm talking about parents in particular, dealing with their stuff on top of all of that. It's a lot.
And it's debilitating, and it's what tanks people and paralyzes them from doing it in the hour of the greatest need. And that's why I feel like while you have your faculties, do it for yourself. Do your own caregiver guide, do a little bio, start with a pet guide if you have a pet. It's something you're a little distanced from, but not. It's a member of your family you care about greatly. You want all those details to be in there. It's a great teacher. And I feel like it's, again, the people who are not in my position of being somebody who thinks ahead and is a big planner, and they're the people who need to do it the most. And when you have that free time, do your checklist. Even if it's just a bare bones checklist, even if it's a bare bones pet giver guide, you will find yourself feeling so freed up by not having to carry all that in your hard drive and thinking, I have to tell somebody or write it down later. And it doesn't work. Give yourself the gift of dealing with all the emotion involved that's connected to all the stuff, because loss is loss. It doesn't matter if it's, certainly fire, as long as everybody is alive, that's the great thing. But if you've lost a parent, and I think a lot of us are not prepared for that. I was, again, very fortunate. I had great parents, and it's very hard to wrap your head around the inevitable, because it always feels like it's going to happen to somebody else. And until you experience it, or somebody you love is going through it and you're worried about their state of mind, that's when you make mistakes. That's when it can compound a bad situation, when you aren't prepared for just the one thing. So that's...
We're going to go to a break, Sage, and what I'd like to do when we come back is talk about the different kinds of lists that people can start. And so they can look at the list of lists, we'll call it, and they can look at that list and sort of pick a priority, something that they could start working on now that's higher on the priority than some of the other ones. So we'll come up with that list right after this.
Kick up your life. We'll be right back with Master Mel right after this. Are you too busy to eat clean? Do you need to boost your energy, tone your body, and burn fat? Then it's time to treat yourself to the cleanest, high-quality protein supplement available. Introducing Whey Clean. Whey Clean is a completely natural, non-denatured, and bioactive protein from the milk of grass-fed cows raised by the Amish, the old-fashioned way. No pesticides, hormones, gluten, soy, or GMOs. Want to know if your protein is clean? Read the label. How many ingredients? Are they all real? Can you even pronounce them? Whey Clean uses only 4 of the highest quality real food ingredients available and leaves out all the fillers, thickeners, additives, and sweeteners the other guys use. Don't compromise. You deserve the best. Go to cleancut.com. That's clean, KUT.com. And get yours today so that you can eat clean and live happy.
Okay, good. I've got Sage Parker here on the line, and we are talking about creating lists and doing work in advance of any kind of disaster that could happen or transition that's happening in your family or in your own life that will help free you up for all the emotional challenges of that transition and sort of free you from those things that could really bring a lot of fear in that situation, kind of bog you down. So thanks so much for being here, Sage. Yeah. I like the idea of being proactive. I'm a martial artist, and one of the things that I do is I teach self-defense and I train for bad things to happen. And in fact, I've just finished writing a book where I've interviewed a lot of martial artists and had them contribute stories to this book. And I want to get some juicy stories about how they've used, their martial arts skills to defend themselves or to, and no one has. I mean, it's so rare that people have had to use their training in that way. However, the training has taught them on a completely other level and has given them more life skills and character skills rather than self-defense skills. And so what I've learned through that whole process, that it's not about, you're not learning so that, I'm not learning just in case someone attacks me and then waiting for someone to attack me. I'm doing that to build the confidence so no one ever would attack me. It's about preparing in advance for preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. And if I never have to use those skills for that, I still am a winner.
But look at where those skills have taken you, and look at how your life has been informed by doing that. And that's the thing, the self-confidence component is so great, especially for people that travel. You write down all these things in your lists and you're prepared for that. It gives you that confidence, the confidence that comes with preparation. It may be a false confidence to a certain degree, but it really helps you then take that confidence and maneuver in other situations as well. So
I think that's a great point, Sage. I was thinking of, in fact, we're planning a trip right now, and when if the airlines lose your luggage, what's the first thing that they ask you? They want a list of the contents. So you're like making up stuff, like you're trying to figure out what it is that you actually had in there, but then they want to know how much do these things cost, and all of that is such a pain. It's such a pain. Whereas if I already had a list of everything I wanted to take, I'm not even doubling on any work. I'm making a list of all the things that I want to take. Then I just go down that list, throw them all in a bag.
Well, that's one of the things that's new that I've just added as a component to these books that I do is a travel guide. And in it, it was really started because I had a client who travels a lot. She's lost luggage. She gets in a panic when she has to travel. And even though she's done it a lot, it's, you're packing for different weather. And I thought, this is another incident where write it down, that whole idea, just put it in a notebook. And I devised this thing where, and it's so simple, losing your luggage is really stressful, and it can tank a vacation depending on what's in there. Especially if you're not a person who's easily rolls with things and just goes, oh, I'll just go buy a couple of things and I'll be fine. And so it's what's the most important thing? I call it getting real. Get real with what's real in the situation, with what's happening now. Not the what ifs, not the idea of wrapping your head around an earthquake or lost luggage, but okay, what do I need for this trip? Start there. What do I need for the day for my pet? What do I need for the day for my mom and myself? And start making those lists. And you'll find all of a sudden you have a packing list. You go through your mind of what you use on a daily basis, and you try to shorten that for the purposes of travel, to be able to put in a carry-on or whatever. It's pretty easy stuff. And also putting I'm big on a laminating machine. I'm just saying, I have a problem.
I'm learning so much about it.
I laminate. This is, and it started years ago because I was having to tape stuff to the refrigerator, and they would just disintegrate, lists for the kids and that kind of thing. And I got this really cheap laminating thing, and I ended up devising tags for luggage, which I put in the guide when I make that for my clients. And also, somebody said at the airlines when I lost my luggage, well, didn't you have your information inside? And I said, yeah, I had a tag that I filled out and put inside. And they went, good thinking, because it's about this big. No one's ever going to see it. And so I typed up a fairly big little, big square to lay on the top of your luggage that's laminated both sides, that has your contact information. My kids laughed at me. When I first did this, I did it for my son who was going away to Berklee College of Music in Boston. And he had his one instrument, his guitar, and I was like, because I'm a planner, you know, this is expensive. You lose this, you lose a lot of your ability to function in your school environment. So I stuck one without him. You know, I said, please put it in there, put it in the bottom of his guitar case, and you know, damned if he didn't get it back when he left it in the student union. And I put a little thing on there, you know, starving artist. You know, this is my livelihood, and it just, you can do that, and it appeals to people's who are honest, their sensibility about, you know, this is something that's important. It makes his life work. And I've gotten my luggage back. I got my luggage back for the same reasons. I had one of those things in the front of the luggage. So it's like, it's not going, my luggage is going to get stolen. It's like, okay, what do I need to deal with now? You have to put tags on your bag, so why not put something inside? It's like, why not go that extra mile when you're doing all of this stuff? And again, it's just me, and I'm probably nutty, but it's the way my brain works. It's kind of laying things out in a linear way. So, and I know I get all the jokes about how I'm, you know, constantly disaster proofing, and then disaster constantly hits or whatever, but it really,
disaster doesn't hit you. But I do want to bring up something that I know that you did not that long ago that really touched my heart, and that is this pilgrimage you did when you did the walk, and you walked the Camino.
yeah, the Camino to Compostela de Santiago, and that I did that in 2013, and it was a real reaffirmation for me that what I do is important in terms of all of this preparedness, because I think a lot of people thought that my going on that walk was a recipe for disaster, because I have some health challenges, and the idea for most people to take that time off to do it. And again, I'm very fortunate, but I also believe there's something greater at work when you set your intention to do something and you've freed up to do that and you do all the preparation, you're already on the Camino, and it starts, that energy just sort of propels you towards what it is you're doing or you want to do. And
You start on the Camino before you even get
absolutely. The Camino starts the day either it speaks to you or you start prepping. For me, I had wanted to do it for so many years since I was
Explain what it is for those people who don't know.
Okay. The Camino de Santiago de Compostela is thousands of years old. It's a pilgrimage. And in the Middle Ages and prior to that, the idea of a pilgrimage is you would walk out your door wherever you were, and for the religious pilgrimages, which were at that time and still are, the three great pilgrimages are Rome, Jerusalem, and Santiago. And to do a pilgrimage was to turn yourself over to the elements, to turn yourself over to life, because it's a metaphor for life, because anything can happen. And you simply walk towards one of these great spiritual places. It was started, most of the pilgrimages were started by the Catholic Church. I know a lot of people have issues with the Catholic Church. I was, which I fortunately am not Catholic, or unfortunately, and I have no issues with them. I loved, I went to Catholic school when I was 9 because it was the only school that was close by. And being somebody into drama, I fell in love with the costumes and the theatrical aspects of it and the drama of it. And it was fascinating to me. And it was a whole level of spirituality that I'd never experienced before. And my parents had always taken me to church as an Episcopalian, but this was like, you know, a bump up. And one of the teachers started schooling us on pilgrimages. And she had talked about how there were several routes to the one in Santiago, and one was called the Paris route that went through Orleans. which is where I was born. So at 9, I went, oh, you know, I was born there. And I became kind of fixated on this walk. And the history of this particular pilgrimage is that St. James, after Jesus was crucified, all of the apostles split for obvious reasons because they were going to be martyred. And he went to Spain, to an area that was filled with druids and goddess worshippers, and was spectacularly unsuccessful. He went back to Jerusalem against the behest of his compatriots and was beheaded, which is why the cross of St. James is a sword. And they took him back to Spain on a boat, his remains along with his head, and it was buried in a field of stars, hence Compostela, which was later found and deemed to be him. But again, who knows? For me, you know, who knows who's buried in that cathedral in Santiago? For me, the power of the walk was what was in the ground and all the people that had walked it before, who were wanting redemption or forgiveness or new life or grieving. And that was, I never envisioned that I'd be able to do it because I was so young. My health was bad, as I said. My father had passed away. And shortly after he did, I came home and I found one of the books he gave me that said, and the inscription was Buen Camino. And I thought, that's a sign. And I wanted to reboot my health and my life. So I read everything I could and I prepped for 2 years and found a doctor who was willing to say, you're not stupid, and there are hospitals in Europe with good doctors, and if you get into trouble, here's what you need to do. And I laid it out and, you know,
prepared.
walking.
You made your lists. You made it happen.
Yeah.
Very proud of you. How long did it take you to walk it?
For me, it was 2.5 months because I was incredibly slow, and I also needed a knee replacement at the time. And I also wanted to see everything. I mean, a lot of people do that walk. It's to get to Santiago and to say they've been. For me, if I was going to do it, I knew it was only going to be once. And I was going to do every single thing I'd read about for all the years I had been enamored by it. And I did. I really, and walking slowly, which I thought and everybody else thought was going to just be the big hindrance, was the greatest thing. In fact, they now have a group on these websites for the Camino called Slow Strollers of the Camino, because I felt like I missed nothing. I didn't take being there for granted for 1 second. And there were a lot of things that happened that were what people would term miracles that are unexplainable.
Well, it's a perfect example of how preparing in advance, making your lists, doing your research actually freed you up to actually be totally present while you were doing it.
Well, then it was like everybody thought it was disaster proofing, you know, and I wasn't proofing for disaster. I had to be, for me and my health challenges, I had to be specifically aware of certain things, that if certain things happened, I had to have information about my medical condition with me at all times. I had to have it in 3 languages because at the time I walked it, there weren't a lot of Americans on the walk. They were mostly German and European, German, Spanish, French, and some English. But it freed me up. I mean, just that was the great proof for me. In doing all of that, that's what made me feel like I could do the walk. It didn't make me more fearful. It made me go,
more confident.
I can do this.
Yeah, it made you more confident. I love that.
It was about taking responsibility for my own health and my own life. And if that was going to be what the Camino was about for me, I better not put the person I was walking with in any kind of a situation by not preparing, you know, by just going, oh, I'll just get on the Camino and I'll start walking. But once I got there, that's exactly what I did. I forgot about all the stuff. Things happened. I had to change plans. I found myself very flexible and able to do it. And it was life-changing. And it was, and again, it was this great proof that preparation means freedom.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, it doesn't for everybody. So.
Yeah, I love that. And we could do a whole show just about the Camino, which would be super fun to do. But I did promise that we would talk about the list of lists.
Yes.
That people could look at this list, create an action item, leave this time together with an action item on what list they want to tackle first and how to go about that. So why don't you go down your your favorite lists that you help people create?
Well, I think that the thing you have to do, and this is what I do with clients, is I get to know them. You have to be real about where you are in your life, everything from what are your finances, what's your, how do you live your life every day, what choices do you make, what things are important to you. And that's how you gear your lists. It's not, every list is not right for everybody.
Right.
So
that's why I want to give a list of the kinds of lists that you have worked on.
Okay, so what I have in terms of even the inventory list, not everybody needs all of it. But the example would be the inventories that I have, lists of everything. I thought of, okay, for instance, I have one that's just sports, because if you've got 2 kids and they're in 2 different sports, you've amassed tons of equipment and time that are sitting in a garage, hockey sticks, roller skates, baseball bats, face mitts, all these things cost a tremendous amount of money. So I went to sporting goods stores and found out what they cost, what things you need for basics for doing sports. Okay, so if you've got that, that's one. Another is if the height of your home.
Hang on, I want to go a little bit broader because we only have a few more minutes left. So we've got a home inventory.
Yeah, so the home inventory list is compiled of lots of other sub-lists. And what's important to you and what's about your life, whether it's sports or kitchen or whatever, that's where you want to start. What you've amassed the most of. You want to do, most people have a pet. You want to do a pet care.
Like a pet care guide.
Pet care guide. Also, you want to do, if you've got young children and you have to work, and even if you don't, stuff comes up, you want to have a child care guide. You want to have the contact list for babysitters and backup babysitters for the babysitters. You want to have medications and homework schedules. Then you have a home care guide. If there's a lot of people doing Airbnb right now, or doing any number of renting a room, or you want to have there are 2 different kinds. One is welcome to my home, things to know and not know that are important about the house. If somebody is staying there as a guest, even if you just have guests for the weekend, it's nice to have a little book by the nightstand. You know, here's where the switches are. If I'm not here and you need to do this, you know, simple stuff that we take for granted that we do every day.
There's nothing worse than your guest breaking your washing machine because they didn't know how to use it, and you were gone to work and they decided to do a load of laundry, and now your house is flooded or something.
All of that. So with the guest care, with the guests, welcome to our home books, as well as, you know, house sitting or people who are renting, I include a notebook that has all the basic electronics, how to run the channel changer. A lot of us have multiple channel changers, and I've had people call and go, I don't know how to turn on the TV, I don't know how to do the cable. What's your internet password?
That for you.
Yeah. What's your internet password? Where the clean sheets are, how to run the washing machine if you don't want to go to those links. What I do is I just put in a notebook, and I say in the welcome to my home guide or the take care of my house guide, you say, please see notebook that's an addendum that has all of the warranty and operating instructions. You want to do that. Then if you have somebody who, also with the caregiver guide, you want to have information if somebody has to drive your car, where the registration and insurance papers are, and do they have insurance? You want to ask those questions in a book that they read, so if you leave the car for them to take care of. Let's see.
Medical tracker, medical tracking guide.
Yeah, the medical tracking book is really important if you're a caregiver. And I found it great for me, but again, I have certain challenges. Everybody now in the world of medicine is a specialist. You don't go to an internist anymore. You go to a pulmonologist, you go to a gastroenterologist. So you have all of these people to keep track of. And that's the other list with the caregiver guide, with the medical tracker, with your child care guide. You want to have a list of the physicians, all that contact information, who they are, where they're located, their addresses and phone numbers. And in the medical tracker, write down when you go on an appointment, and you have to remember if you're prepping for surgery or something that's just a procedure, a simple procedure, people tend to check out. So to have something to write it down in, and better yet, to have somebody else writing it down for you so that you can listen intently, is even better. And you want to have things like what went on at the last appointment, so you know what questions to ask at the next one. What's your baseline? Do you know your baseline blood pressure? Do you know your baseline blood type? I mean,
That's a question, right?
most people don't know. You know, they go in and they sit there in the doctors and they become bobbleheads and go, okay, whatever. And they get home and go, what did they say? And it's also a place to I keep it in a tote bag. And then my prescriptions, if they're not called ahead, don't go in a purse somewhere in the bottom, or my instructions for lab work, they go in that book. So that's another thing. If you have any sort of regular health stuff that you do. And I also,
these are living documents. They're not something you do and then you file away somewhere. It's something that's organic and dynamic and working.
And file cabinets, in my opinion, do not work. I call these notebooks desktop filing cabinets, because you're not going through where some small piece of paper has gotten in the wrong file because it was next to the other one and it's down in the bottom and you forget about it. You pull that notebook off a desk, and everybody has a bookcase. It's just, when I go in to redo somebody's house, that's one of the places I start. We take all those important bits of information and they go in a notebook and they go on a bookcase. And you don't have to worry about, and some of them, if you have personal information, can go in a lockbox or in a safe deposit box. So
these are some great tips. And I could tell we could take any one of these several guides. You've named about 8 or 10 different guides or lists that you do. We could take one of them and spend a whole hour just talking about that and questions and so forth. So this can be complicated, but what I like about you is you do make it more simple. And I'll make sure to leave some contact information about you in the show notes, so that people can get in touch with you, and if they want your services or they have more questions for you. But like you said, this is something you don't want to wait.
No, and you
get started.
Again, you can do it yourself. The way I work is highly personalized, so I don't take a lot of clients at one time, because I really want to get into the way their life works and be able to help them have it run smoother and have everything be simplified, so that they have that peace of mind.
That's what I like. You say on your Facebook page, which is Caroline's for Life, it says, your life less complicated.
Yes.
And I appreciate that, because we could all use a little bit less complications, for sure. So thank you so much, Sage.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And please go to mastermel.com, get more information about Sage and her services, and we will see you again next time.
Thanks for listening to Kick Up Your Life with Master Mel. Each week, learn how to optimize your business and your life with Master Melodee Meyer, as she speaks with thought leaders, athletes, entrepreneurs, and high achievers to discover their secrets of success. Kick Up Your Life with Master Mel, every week right here on Radio Star Worldwide.